Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Okay, for folks that I'm going to be splitting this video into several, obviously, when I put it on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah.
So for folks that happen to stumble on this video first, I'm talking to Rhys Clark, who has been and it remains a hugely influential drummer in the rock and roll world. And I want to thank you very much for talking to me. So far, it's been really fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm having fun too. I appreciate the opportunity, Adam.
Oh yeah, well you've got so many great stories to tell. And what's even more
Yeah.
amazing is despite all this amazing stuff we've talked about regarding Billy Joel and your 4 years with him, your biggest collaboration was much longer. It was 20 years with Hoyt Axton.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
And for folks that have heard maybe Hoyt Axton's name but don't know who he is, his most famous song is Joy to the World, that Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog song. And
yep.
also I've Never Been to Spain. So those are his two big hits.
Yep.
Talk
Yep.
about, if you wouldn't mind, you've just passed the baton to the man who's gonna be with Billy as he gets into superstardom, and you've been left
Right.
behind. So where do you go
Yeah.
from there?
Well, you go back to the trenches and the minor leagues.
Yeah, right. What's that like?
And yeah. Well, it's once again, I've had, situations where I was with other singer-songwriters and playing local live band scenarios and looking for a record deal. So you go back to that and you carry on surviving and get into new projects and hope to tread that path again with a different scenario. And so what happened was um, at a certain point of doing more local stuff, mostly in town in Los Angeles. I got a call, 1980, so that was like a 4 year period from Hoyt Axton's secretary, and she wanted to know if I was interested in becoming Hoyt's drummer, and so I knew of him and so forth, and Joy to the World, and I said yes, I'd like to. So I figured I was going to, audition for the gig, but no. He specifically called me because he'd gotten recommendation from his recording engineer for a replacement drummer, and the engineer happened to be Corey Bailey, who had set up the PA system for the first live concert of Billy Joel at
Huh.
at the starting gate in the Village. No, the Gaslight in the Village of New York when we did our first live show. And this was the engineer who was in charge of setting up the PA system. And he still had my phone number from then. He was doing work for Family Records. So here comes my name again via Billy, actually. And so I said, yeah. So he said, okay, well, we're going on the road. And our first date is Salt Lake City at the university there. And I'll give you a set list of the songs and, let's go have some fun.
So is
And
this your second? it- Had you been on the road with other artists besides Billy, or was Billy your only kind of artist you toured with?
no, Billy was the first road band that I'd be touring.
So this is your second
Yeah.
road band experience then.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had one during before I went and joined Billy. One of the other artists on the label was Kyle, and I played on some tracks on his album. Um, and in that scenario, John DeAndrea, I think the drummer's name was. He didn't like LA. He wanted to go back to New York, and so Artie brought me in to do the new tracks on his album, and I did do a couple of tours with Kyle. So back to after Billy. No, I was doing local Los Angeles stuff. There was plenty of work to be had in the studio and in clubs and bars, etc. So I got back into the steady flow, and into the flow of, hoping to make something of, the band I was in with original songs, etc.
Oh, you had a
And
band on the side as well.
well, I was in several bands, yeah,
Oh, I
and
see.
so and so what these projects would do was we would get an opportunity to go and audition, for producers and go in the studio and record and do album projects. So I was also involved in that. Okay, um, and one project that comes to mind is the Gaffney Freeman Band, and Leo Gaffney and Lee Freeman were musicians from Los Angeles here, and I did a whole album with them, and they got a producer, and we went into A&M Studios, and they were looking to get a deal on Columbia. So here I am coming around. Maybe I'm got another opportunity with Billy's label, the same label as Billy's on, and you take that course, and it survives or it doesn't on all the elements that it takes, you know. But so once again, there's still wonderful tapes on shelves of good stuff, like with Family Records stuff. So, um, so this was an opportunity to actually go back on the road
Yeah,
with
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 Hoyt.
a name and with a track proven singer songwriter, and a certain stature. Um, I, you know, 1970 Joy to the World was worldwide. It almost was worldwide song of the year in that year, 70.
Yeah.
I mean, it got beaten out by Clouds or something like that, Judy Collins. But so so I knew that I was back in the swing, Adam, of another level.
Yeah.
Where I would be now back in to those opportunities, that were are always there when you get back into a level of performing and and in the business.
Right.
And Hoyt had a wonderful level when it came to who he associated with, obviously.
He was a bit I guess he was past his prime at that point as far as not as a performer but as an ability to reach an audience perhaps. He had had his peak as a popular act. So and yet I imagine you describe him, I don't know much about him, you
Right.
describe him
Okay.
as
Yeah.
a great I'd love
Yeah.
for you to tell me about
Okay.
what it was like to apparently he was very vibrant and still awesome in the 80s.
Oh yeah. Um, what happened was he just uh, suffered a little from what Billy wanted to be, as Billy has said. He just wanted to be a songwriter and hope somebody else, had the hit on his song.
Yeah, right.
Well, Hoyt was that. Hoyt had, you know, on had recorded and put out on an album a song called "Joy to the World," and another act needed material, and these three guys from Three Dog Night had their own band and their own act. Richie Podler was their producer, and Richie and them chose new songs to cover, and they chose to cover Hoyt Axton's original song called "Joy to the World." And now you know what happened. It
Right.
went worldwide.
They
It,
covered
it's
Never Been to Spain too, didn't they? Isn't that all?
and then as a follow up, yeah,
Yeah.
they did Never Been to Spain,
Yeah.
and so what it does for Hoyt is it also gives him his career huge embellishment. But in what form that is he gets embellishment in uh, royalties, providing he's got a good deal with publishing, right?
Yeah.
He gets a huge without having to do anything except deposit the check.
Right.
And but it also embellishes him when he goes to perform. Now he can claim being the songwriter in his performance and doing the song, so he's got that embellishment. But that is a limited embellishment because he can only share that with people because most people don't know he's the writer. They know that Three Dog Night is the hit.
Yeah, right.
So you're in the shadows there. And not only that, but they have a follow-up hit on Never Be to Spain, but most of them don't get that it's the same songwriter, and because they they've already committed to giving Three Dog Night that amazing attention.
Right.
Yeah, so you kind of have to promote yourself because you're the writer. So and so that's what Hoyt had to deal with in his personal shows, whereby he had uh, he had that recognition, but he kind of had to tell people about it. you
Right.
know,
And here's a
you
song
know,
I wrote that you may have heard of.
yeah, and so he had to do that,
Yeah.
and
But he
and
had a long career. You were
yes, he
with him for
did.
20 years, so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's just for him when I was with him.
Right, right.
I mean, I joined him in 1980, and 1970, 1960, the early 60s was when Hoyt came out to Los Angeles from Oklahoma, from home, and brought his guitar and his vocal abilities and songwriting abilities, and got into the music business in Hollywood.
Wow.
And so his first hit record, he was in the folk scene, right?
Yeah.
And so he also in his travels was in the New York folk scene, in the Village and so forth. But mostly he was prominent here in the Los Angeles music creative scene in Laurel Canyon.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you know, but there's been books out about it. But Laurel Canyon became a big, a big location in all the hit records from the 60s and 70s in Hollywood. Everybody was living in Laurel Canyon in Hollywood.
Is that the Joni Mitchell song "Ladies of the Canyon" refers to Laurel Canyon, doesn't it?
And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That song she wrote about was her life at that moment, living in Laurel Canyon, jamming with everybody,
Right.
writing songs together, writing songs separately, playing your songs for each other, in a circle in somebody's living room up on Lookout Mountain Drive.
Right.
And that's where all the creativity was going on. And so Hoyt, in the 60s and the folk scene, um, he actually, his first hit record that he wrote was covered by a very well-known worldwide folk trio called the Kingston Trio.
Yep.
Yeah, and they covered a song of his called Greenback Dollar.
Right.
That was his first hit record.
How about that?
Yeah, and where did his DNA? What was it filled with? His DNA as a songwriter was his mother's uh, creative songwriting.
Oh, it
And
was. You tell me.
his, yeah, his mother, Mae Barn Axton, was one of the instrumental people in starting Elvis's career.
Huh.
And she was an English teacher at that time, and she was delving in the music business with Elvis. And she was doing his publicity and PR work, writing up his bios, etc., and help coordinating getting concert and appearances, television. Um, and she came in when he got his deal with RCA. Okay,
Yeah.
and so being an English teacher, she also wrote poetry and song lyrics. And she got together one day with a guitar player by the name of Tommy Durden, and uh, Tommy Durden went into the studio and made a demo of her lyrics and his music. And so he sang the song and you know created the melody and the chord changes. And it was a song called Heartbreak Hotel.
How about that?
Yeah. And so that was Hoyt's mother's first hit record.
So Hoyt
And
was he's
yeah,
raised in the thick of it.
yes, yes, he
Yeah.
was raised in all that, in that whole scene, and May was, therefore became quite established in the business, and so she was at that time. Some of her clients slash friends were Willie Nelson, um,
Hmm.
and Hoyt had a lifelong relationship with Arlo Guthrie, and May also was part of the relationship with Hoyt and Arlo.
Yeah.
Hoyt had then went into, and so May was managing Hoyt, and so the Smothers Brothers TV show, he made an appearance on there. But what did he do? Well, he sang one of his songs, and he did a duet. And who did he do the duet with on the Smothers Brothers? Linda Ronstadt.
Huh.
Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? He was
Hmm.
in that whole Laurel Canyon thing. Hoyt was a major.
Right. Right.
So yeah, and so he he was his establishment therefore got him not only United States markets but the Canadian markets and the Europe markets. And just before he passed away, um, we were getting ready to do an Australian market tour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so, but by then, Adam, he was kind of frail.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, he a huge, robust energy, a wonderfully likable man, very warm. You know, he did his duty as a country western known artist. When we'd finish a concert at you know a summer fair in Springfield, Illinois, in the heat of the day, Hoyt, with his felt cowboy hat on, his tweed cowboy coat, would spend major time after we'd sweated through 90 minutes and sit at a table and autograph for all the audience who lined up in the heat. He'd do this,
Yeah.
Uh,
That's tremendous.
yeah, yeah. But so he also, uh, because of his wonderful tone and his baritone voice, he had an agent who got him on voiceovers and commercials. And
Oh,
so, yeah, so he in his time did a lot of commercials, and one account that he did voiceovers for was Bush Beer,
huh.
and for 8 years he was the voice
Head for the
on
mountain.
yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. I'll be
Yeah,
darned.
yeah.
No wonder it's hard to get that beer commercial out of your head. So he's the guy
Really?
singing "It's That Time of Day" when you can say, "Come on and head to the mountain." It's that time of day. That's Hoyt
Yeah,
Axton. I
yeah,
wonder. I did not know. Wow, that's
yeah.
really
And
interesting.
yeah, yeah, and he did Shakey's
Uh-huh.
commercials. He did Shakey's Pizza. Um, he did California summer fruit commercial. He did a lot. Because the agent was exclusive for those medias and the television and movie medias. So what happened was he was therefore splitting up his focus as a songwriter and also being very successful money wise at the other medias, the television, the movies, etc. He was in Francis Ford Coppola's Gremlins.
Oh, wow.
He played the father who gave his son the gremlin for Christmas.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Wow, he's just been all over the place.
and yeah, exactly. And he would be in the Ponderosa series with Lorne Green and Dan Blocker, and he'd do a song. They would write him in to the to a an episode.
Yeah.
So he had all those kind of exposures as well. But what was interesting? Um, the None of them really blended or spilled over into each other.
So he managed to keep it all kind of discreet, kept his little
Yeah.
threads going.
Well, it's just the way that uh, you became known in the different medias. One didn't necessarily help the other. Uh, for instance,
Right.
in the music media, in the recording industry, Hoyt was, at a level there. But then when it came to exposure and television shows, because he did a lot of television shows,
Yeah.
because this was an agent who that was his focus was television and movies and commercials.
I'm starting to remember now more about him as
Yeah,
you mentioned this, that I don't
yeah,
think
oh
I'd put
yeah,
his thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right, right. And so that was some part of the, the kind of the downside of that is that you end up having to remind people in a given concert here when you're going to do Joy to the World that you have to remind them that you're the writer. Three Dog Night did the song,
Right.
and 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 I'm glad they did it. And here we go.
Yeah. So it sounds like his concerts were full of people who loved him and, they followed him
Yep.
around. Yeah.
Because once again, like Billy's personality, um, he he knew he was very comfortable in talking between songs, be able to talk one on one with the audience. He There would be times when, and Hoyt did this too. Uh, if there was a negative moment where Billy was the underdog, as I said, the guy talking during Rosalinda, Billy made that guy respond, and what I'm saying?
I do.
And Hoyt did the same thing, except that Hoyt went a little further than Billy, and it was the troubadour too. There was this Yahoo down the back there who was drunk and was just peeving Hoyt off, and so he warned him, and song went by, and then he was doing, and he warned him again, and he said, finally, Hoyt said, "Excuse me, folks, obviously this guy didn't get my message, and I really, if you give me a minute, I really have to take care of this." And he walked off the stage and walked to the back of the room, and picked the guy up on the scruff of the neck and took him outside in the alley of the troubadour and took
Took
care of
care.
him.
Yeah.
Came back in and got up on stage and picked his guitar up and to the huge applause and carried on his set.
Were you playing that night?
No, no, no. This was
This is
Hoyt solo.
this is before.
This was just before Billy and we did our first troubadour. This was
Oh, I
like a
see.
year before, and
Okay.
Hoyt see, because Hoyt was a major name there. He was a major draw,
Right.
and right down the road here, right in front of me, there was a club here in Huntington Beach called the Golden Bear, and it also had a lot of people who made it hugely worldwide later on, and
Hmm.
this was one of their outlets that they could play, like the Troubadour, and Hoyt became a major name draw at this place called the Golden Bear, and you could Google its history and you'll see all the big names who started out at the Troubadour, and the Golden Bear was the Orange County place to play. So,
Yeah.
so in concert, like Billy, Hoyt, could get into conversations because it was easy for both of them to do that. There's a bunch of wonderful comparisons between Billy and Hoyt that I'm once again lucky that I got the opportunity to come back into a situation that had all the major elements that Billy has.
Right. And
And
apparently,
Billy, later on in life, Billy acknowledged me to a reporter at here in LA at one of Billy's concerts that Rhys went on to be Hoyt X's drummer. And,
oh, that's nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so I traveled the world with Hoyt,
Right. It's
and
20 years. That's a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, and wonderful.
Was that so Hoyt was involved, you said, in a lot of things, and as you mentioned, now I'm beginning to remember who he is and how I saw him in the movies and the TV shows. um, so he wasn't touring all the time then.
No, no, his downtime, differently to Billy's, was Billy. never toured. It, I mean, that may have changed after the huge success, but he always, and I think he purposely did it, he never toured in the summer. We always toured fall and winter,
Yeah.
yeah, and not in the summer. So Hoyt basically was year round in that respect. But but he would on the downtime for us, he would be doing a movie like Gremlins because he did a bunch of movies
Yeah.
and there was one really a B movie that we he got us into doing the music for the movie, which was neat. That was a neat experience,
Uh-huh. Which movie?
And it was a B movie, and it remains that way. Uh, this guy had a successful movie he made himself with different people um, called the movie called Gone in 60 Seconds, and it was basically uh, how many ways you could crash vehicles of all shapes and sizes
Yeah.
in 60 seconds. And so he the movie became a monetary success in drive-ins. Okay, and the guy came away with like $17 million from
Yeah.
it. And so he then, upped his ego and said, "Well, I'm going to do another movie, and I'm going to do the script. I'm going to star in it and do the whole thing." And so he wrote this movie called The Junk Man, and he played himself as a an owner of an L.A. Um, property that reconditioned and remodels vehicles of high end, Ferraris, Maseratis, and Rolls Royces, a chop shop.
Yeah.
And so he wrote a movie about um, the parade every year that people get into who go and honor and tribute James Dean. And
Okay.
they all gather um, at James Dean's crash site every year. I don't know if it was still going, but then it was a very popular annual thing to do. And so he made a movie about and added a mysterious, enemy into it, wanting to steal money and sabotage things, and and he wrote the script and he starred in it, and he had a Hoyt star in it too.
Ah.
And so Hoyt may have suggested that let's say I got my band together and we do the music, and so we got to do the music for this B movie, which was an experience. And what came out of it for Hoyt was on one of the tracks we did for one of the scenes, Hoyt took the track and wrote a song about James Dean, called James Dean, and he put the vocal and the lyrics on the track and made a song out of it. And it was actually really good. But it was like, well, this is a great idea, but to get it radio friendly, we really should just do it again because it's so good, but it just needs to be redone and polished up a little because its purpose was background. Now, now you want to make it in the foreground. But no, he said, no, 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 no. I love it as it is, and so, but that was where Hoyt's radio friendliness kind of um, became, you know, a little bit of a problem because he put it, he built his own studio, did it independently, to put his own label together, and tried to get hit records that way. Like Artie, like everybody who's starting a record label. Well, Hoyt did too. And it was called Jeremiah Records. Yeah. And and this was basically a partnership with his mother, May Barn Axton. May was kind of the founder of it all
Yeah.
because she became such a major socialite in the Nashville music scene. You know,
Yeah.
so every time we went to Nashville, we would do the Nashville Now Network shows and hang out at at May's beautiful mansion in Hendersonville. Um, and, Dave Allen Coe, Willie Nelson, if he was in town, uh, other people who long associated with May and Hoyt, they drop by and hang out.
So now
And
you've got a window to an entirely different world.
you do. You've got the Nashville world window, and you're coming in here not as we all do it, where we come totally unknown and hope to get known. We're I'm coming into Nashville on this kind of red carpet thing
Yeah,
called called Hoyt's touring bus,
right.
and you're at a level already. But the thing about that is that's okay. But if you, as an individual, decide, well, I'm going to move to Nashville now, well, you kind of now have to use that as a promotion because you are starting again yourself, because
Hmm.
you're not Hoyt, you're not Billy, um, and so anyway, but yeah, you're doing all these wonderful things associated with Anheuser Busch. We did a huge production at the Shrine Auditorium here in Los Angeles, and they spent like 12. I had a $12 million budget for one show.
Oh my gosh.
Anheuser Busch paid for 3,000 distributors on the West Coast here to fake them with a concert and and um, and like a convention, right? And Anheuser-Busch convention, and the star, and they made it a Hollywood star thing, and so it included in the show everybody from Johnny Carson to Bob Hope to George Burns, and to all the named celebrities who did Anheuser-Busch commercials.
Yeah.
And Hoyt represented Bush. And what did we do on this concert? We did one song.
And then you got to enjoy the rest of it.
And yeah, we were limoed from the hotel. We had tuxes, uh, and everything was just first class. The money was no object, and
Wow.
so got yeah. And you get I'm sitting at the table, and George Burns is right here. And we're talking with George.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and so Hoyt was part of those things too, because that was very big money, and that also helped fuel the road costs of touring and all that.
Hmm.
And Adam, as far as material and what I'm playing as a drummer, his catalog is just huge,
Yeah.
and he like Billy has got some incredible songs. But where the difference is with Hoyt and Billy is Billy stayed totally focused on the music business. Hoyt did stay focused, but also he ended up focusing on the other medias, the television, the movies,
Yeah.
and commercials.
Sounds like he had a good time.
Yeah, he knew. See, when he arrived in Los Angeles, the good time setup was already, just training along, and it was there in Laurel Canyon,
Yeah.
and all the musicians who were coming from everywhere else on the globe, they were getting together on different days and nights, and early mornings and late mornings together, and it's a scene. It's a scene. It's a hub, and so the Lou Adler, the who produced Tapestry, right,
Hmm.
and many other successful things at that time. Later on in life, he got together with a photographer who also became a photographer in the graphic side of all these artists and the record labels. And so he had lots of film and footage of Joni Mitchell's, of Crosby, Stills and Nash, of Frank Zappa, of Jim Morrison, of all the people that were coming out of those hills, that were coming down the hill to the studio, recording their songs, going back up into the hills,
They hang
and
out.
and yeah, and partying. I mean, 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, they were doing the scene, and so Hoyt was amongst that. And that's how Joy in the World got to Three Dog Night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and I was here with the executives, and we didn't know any of them. We just knew they were here and they were doing their thing, and that any moment at the record plant there, you could in the door would come, Sly Stone, Phil, Phil Spector, and I'm saying these people did come in the door.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because Artie had an association back in New York with Phil Spector, so
Uh-huh.
you know, so he would call up Phil, and Phil would come down to listen to the session, and they were all doing that with each other. David Crosby would come down to Brian Wilson's session, and Brian Wilson would come to hang out with David Crosby.
Rhys, I'm feeling very left out.
Yeah. Well, I understand. Yeah. But that was the thrive.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
driving it all. Yeah.
Just
Uh,
wow.
so the creativity was immense, and but so Lou Adler and the photographer, they put a book out called let's see, Joni Mitchell's album was Ladies of the Canyon. They put out Canyon of Dreams, and the book is totally that. It's all photos of all those worldwide name acts who were recording and then going back up into the hills and writing new songs, and they were all the elite.
Yeah.
And it's called Canyon of Dreams, and it's a great book. And so check it out. I mean, I'm sure you can download it now and Google it and all that. But
Sure.
yeah, it's because it's a huge piece of rock and roll history.
Regarding Hoyt's band, was
Yeah,
the band pretty much the same all 20 years, or were you?
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
No,
So
no. It was pretty much the same. Yeah.
nice. So you had
Well,
kind of a family thing going on.
exactly. It was definitely a family thing. Yeah, and I came to discover that experience was such that uh, that was basically how the country and western industry uh, came about in Nashville, and all the country towns, north, south, east, and west states of the country music scene. It was it was a family operation. They were all, what I'm saying. Their mode of operation was based on a family situation,
Yeah.
instead of the hard hustle.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so Hoyt was exactly that. Yeah.
And you were able to do that for 20 years. And
Yes.
Hoyt passed away in 99.
Yeah, that's right. And unfortunately, he the remember the parties we talked about in Laurel
Yeah.
Canyon.
Uh-huh.
Well, at some point you may have to pay for it.
Right. Right.
And so in Hoyt's case, yep. There was one time during the height of Joy to the World, Hoyt was in New York, and just for fun and giggles, he decided to drive to LA. He bought an E-Type Jaguar, and he, with the aid of stuff that keeps you awake, he just drove straight to LA.
Oh my gosh.
Things like that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And so later on in life here, he buys himself he sees a used Ferrari. So in Houston. So he flies down to Houston and buys it and drives it back to LA. Now, that was fine, except for one thing. He's now 330 pounds, and he had a hard time getting into it and a hard time getting out of it. So, that and that was just a relive of his New York to LA E-Type Jaguar Frolly, you know.
Yeah.
So he was doing that all the time in the movies, you know, on set when they were filming. There was all that wonderful celebrating going on there too, you know. I
Right.
mean, the only work he really had to do was when he got on stage and performed. That's the only work he really had to do. So come you're 60 years old now, you know, that's catching up.
Right.
And so unfortunately, what happened was he was 61. He'd had a couple of minor strokes, and he also he'd suffer from a little, you know, a little heart weakness that he would need to check into the hospital and, you know, be stabilized again. So once he was stabilized, he was fine. But all that has taken its toll. So we were getting ready to go to Australia on his UCD, on his uh, mother's label in Nashville. And the irony for me is that the man that was putting together the Australian tour had already done this once for Hoyt in 1985. And so we went to, Hoyt and I went to Australia, and he set up this whole thing. So here he is now in 1999 setting up this tour. And the irony for me is I got a call at 6:30 in the morning, and it was the manager in Australia to tell me that Hoyt, you know, had passed. Merrill and I had talked with Hoyt on the phone 4 days before, and I said, I'll come up and see you because he was now home, and, you know, it was just time to rest. So, so I said, I'll you know, arrange to get up to see you next week. And the manager was Harry Widmer, and he was our manager in the executives. And he was the one that told me at 6:30 a.m. that, you know, Hoyt had moved on.
Yeah.
And so uh, he, I tell everybody that I'm fortunate for the wonderful experiences, Adam, and that Hoyt, even though he was only 61, he lived 4 lifetimes, man.
It sounds like it.
He
Yes.
did. He did. He loved it. He loved it. He was he was a hugely positive man. He was as positive as the words "joy to the world." That was
You
that was him.
you mentioned, you know, talking about Billy, talking to Billy and asking, "Are you my friend?" Did you feel like Hoyt was your friend?
No question. He became uh, yeah. He became more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. He treated me really good. Uh, really did, man. Really did. Treated me really good. And some of it is as an individual, you know, he treated me in certain ways it was uncomfortable because of the way he, you know, was friends towards me. It was you know more extensive. It was a little uncomfortable because I felt like, you know, but really the whole band it was family. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean Billy became family with Liberty and Doug and with Don Evans and myself. Yes, we became beyond the stage and beyond the studio. Yes, because for me, a rapport that I had with Billy right from the get-go was the love of boats. And you know, I grew up in New Zealand with drums and boats.
Right.
And so Billy was piano and boats.
Yeah.
So yeah, with Hoyt,
You're
it
both
was
Islanders. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And not only that, we're North Shore Long Islanders. We're,
Ah,
we're both from the North Shore, born and raised. Yeah.
yeah.
So we grew up on the sea, basically. And with Hoyt, the rapport was just that he he had an immense way of treating people that he really liked. And in the opposite of that, he was just as obvious about people who he didn't like, and they would be people like people who did bad things and thought bad thoughts.
He didn't suffer fools gladly, I think would be the expression.
Yeah, he like Billy's instincts. He knew how to read people real quick,
Yeah.
and and like Billy's having to experience the gamble with somebody, and you hope that that's part of the package that works out. Hoyt was doing the same thing. He like the difference between the creative person and the business. You know, they're oil and water, and so one's necessary for the other. But the idea is that hopefully you can guide your own oil without the water.
That's very poetic. I like that.
Thanks, because Billy and Hoyt did the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Hoyt, if the analogy was the business was the water, he didn't want to swim in it. And Billy, put up with it and knew that it would only be an X amount of time, and Hoyt did too, before, he could get his way.
Yeah. There's a
And so tomorrow is today.
right. Right. Okay.
I've been, yeah, because,
I hadn't thought of
tomorrow's
that.
today. Yeah, I needed to get my way. And that's where the letter came from.
Hmm.
Because Billy has already experienced the business with the hassles,
Right.
in the recording industry. And so, but I just can't have my way. I'm afraid to go to sleep.
And I thought
But
it was a love song.
in that instance, it is about Elizabeth. Yeah.
Okay. But no song is just about a woman, I think, in this
Right.
case.
There are other experiences that you
Yeah.
can draw from on the same subject.
Right.
And I happened to come into Billy's realm at the time when he was, doing a lot of creative things to win Elizabeth over. Yeah.
So, Rhys,
Yeah. So wait, the same
what
thing. So then, yeah. So go ahead.
what you been doing last 20 years?
I've been conjuring up a story for somebody who might listen.
That's me.
Thankfully, I'm glad.
Unbelievable. No, it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Exceeds my expectations. But seriously though,
Yeah.
20 years. Have you been active, or have you just been kind of enjoying the fruits of your labor?
Oh, I transitioned from Hoyt into another solo artist who wasn't the songwriter of Hoyt and Billy. He did write one of his two hit records, and I spent 14 years with him,
What was the name?
Freddie Fender,
Oh yeah.
and he had two hit records, which he got a career out of. And Freddie had a song called "Wasted Days and Wasted Nights,"
Mm-hmm.
and he had a song, another hit called "Before the Next Teardrop Falls." And through the same kind of channels as my transitioning from Billy to Hoyt, it was I had been doing work after Hoyt passed in LA, and I did get to working regularly with a piano player singer who was the son of a famous one back in the early Billy Joel days, and there was a fellow by the name of Charlie Rich.
Yeah.
And Charlie had behind closed doors. Well,
Right.
this was his son Alan, and Alan was a complete clone of his dad, and he was Freddie Fender's musical director. He was a band leader, and
Okay.
so one thing led to another. The drum chair became available with Freddie, and Alan pitched me to Freddie, and Alan calls me back and said, "Yeah, Freddie loves the idea, and I'll send you the playlist for the concert, and next week we open up in Reno,
And then
and
there you
we're headed down
go.
in Reno." And so I got together with Alan, and we went over the song list, and just he had a a studio situation with piano and drums. So we went over the songs, and he, we were already working together. So obviously he's well comfortable with me, and that makes me comfortable with him.
Mhm.
And yeah, we set about, this was a bunch of cover songs that we already knew. So yeah, so we just ran that and ran that and ran that. And hey, so transportation will be such and such a time, and here's the venue in Reno, and I started 14 years in Reno with Freddie, and
And
I went all over the world with him too.
yeah, but this time you're two things are different. One, you've done this before. You've been all over the world. You
Yeah,
played for two huge acts, and this is number
yeah,
three. And
yeah,
two, this is the O's and the tens. So,
yeah, yeah.
how's this experience different?
Um, Only in one way, and that is, which is wonderful for me. Uh, this music is, a lot of it's kind of Latin. It's Latin. It's
Ah,
Tejano. Okay, and I saw it as the same challenge as I had, with every, everybody loves you now. Tomorrow's today. I'm Billy the Kid, traveling Fred, you name it. This is now Latin stuff, and I'm intimidated because I'm not Latin, as you might guess. But one thing I had, that was kind of lucky, was I had, during my time, Adam, I had a sense of kind of being drawn to Latin rhythms, Latin rhythm music, and so I'd emulate it now and then, in a Latin rhythm, and I loved it. It wasn't something when, I'm not good enough at this. It was, I'm not good enough at this, but I sure love trying to be good at this.
yeah.
And and that worked in Freddie's situation, because he was mostly, his his uh, his his backlog was basically, he transitioned very successfully from, from Texas and Louisiana, where he was applying his talents. He transitioned to Nashville, and became successful as a Latin, Freddie Fender in the Nashville scene, doing country and western,
Yeah.
and using his, his culture. So now I'm in situations which are all brand new, and we're doing festivals that are Latin festivals, and so I'm now getting to experience, the Latin field people,
Wow.
and I have an affinity for Latin music, so I can understand rhythmically where they're going,
Yeah.
um, to a degree. And I can understand that also in this particular song, I'll get lost, and sure enough, because they rhythmically changed, and I didn't hear it, but they did, because it's all very subtle. It's all very subtle, and so so that was an incredible experience just on that level. And my peak moment, with Billy, was playing Carnegie Hall. All right, and my peak moment with Hoyt was many things. I think playing Wembley Stadium in England, among all the things. My peak moment with Freddie was, being able to play on, the Lifetime Achievement Award he got on the Elmer Awards, which is the Latin Grammys.
Oh, wow.
So there you go. Uh,
Yeah.
I got to do a Grammy associated situation,
Yeah. And
and
spend 14 years in an entirely different scene. Yeah.
yeah, and being able to enjoy audiences all over the world once again. I went to Australia with Freddie, and he was huge in Europe. So every year, you're going back to those places, and and at one point, another wonderful peak with Freddie was, I got to be the drummer in an offspring that Freddie was involved in. And this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, there was a combination that got a deal, record deal, and they were called the Texas Tornadoes. And they were made up of four different artists. And it was Freddie and Doug Sam. And Doug Sam came from the Sir Douglas Quintet. And he was very involved with Bob Dylan and had success with a song called She's About a Mover back in the early 70s. Well, what happened was uh, they put a Texas Tex-Mex band together, and it was Freddie, Doug, Augie Myers from the Sir Douglas Quintet, and a famous accordion player, Sahana accordion player by the name of Flaco Jimenez. And they were all out of San Antonio, and I got to be the drummer with them for a little while. And that was a big band. There was two drummers, a 12-piece band, and then the four of them. But we got to do some amazing stuff as well as concerts and festivals. We got to do the celebration of a movie called Tin Cup with what's his face?
Kevin Costner, right?
Costner and Cheech Marin was the connection.
Okay.
Because he acted in the movie, and so we got to do the opening night celebration here in Westwood of the movie, and so once again you're with this level again of these people. And so I also got to experience in that Texas Tornado tours, playing side by side with another drummer. And so there were songs in the set where we both played together. And honestly, Adam, I recommend this experience and this feeling to all up and coming players as far as drummers are concerned, because the striving to get us to be one is a marvelous challenge.
To sync with another drummer.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And be in the nano moment together. And you have to marry each other in in the rhythm of the song. And it worked incredible on songs that were really just basically straight ahead, hard driving, straight eighth rock songs. You had perfect opportunity to be simple and therefore rock.
Yeah.
On other songs, it got a little complicated. It got a little messy. And I remember talking with Brian Ruggles at Billy and Elton's concert here that we were at, and I mentioned that because at the time I was doing the Tornado thing, and I said to Brian, "So how is it for you here with Elton's band and Billy's band, and syncing it up, And he said, "Yeah, it's a challenge." And he said the same thing. He said, on some songs it's just overly great, and in some songs it's just the opposite. So I said, "Yeah, I know how Nigel Olsson and Chuck Berge, I know what they had to do in this concept, because I had to do it with the Texas Tornadoes, and see why I was part of the band was Freddie wanted to use his band in the Tornadoes so that he had more control. So he had to deal with Doug, who had the control. So they came to an agreement that they would mix the Tornadoes band and Freddie's band. So that's how the two drummer thing came about. And so Billy and Elton had to kind of do the same thing.
Right.
What songs to do where and who to do what songs.
Yeah.
Because you've got two drummers, you've got two bass players, right, two guitars, and all that. So you've got
Billy and Elton.
and then Billy and Elton.
Right. Yeah. As if that isn't enough by itself.
Yeah. And that's hugely wonderful. I mean, that's way over the top.
I went to
And
one of those. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. Um, I I was down front during Elton's moment there when he was doing his bit, and I was back in the dressing room with Billy before he did his. Elton did his set first, and then Billy came out, and then they joined.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Is that how they did it with the concert you were at?
Absolutely. Yeah. Elton did
Yeah.
his set first, I believe, and
Right.
then Billy did his set, and then yeah, they joined.
Yeah.
Or it may not have been the exact order, but that was the idea. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
pretty
I mean,
cool.
yeah, exactly.
Like
So
3 concerts.
exactly, yeah,
Right.
3 in 1, and so we were hanging with Billy in the dressing room, and Elton's out there, and you can hear what's going on. So I went out because I wanted to see Nigel Olsson because I've been
Yes.
such a fan of
Percussionist,
Nigel.
right?
Drums, yeah,
Oh, he's the drums.
yeah, yeah. He's the drummer on all that early
Oh,
famous
yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
Sorry. Who's the
yeah.
percussion player?
He's a famous British percussionist who I'm not either Elton or Sting brought him to prominence as a percussionist.
Yeah.
He was like had a shaved head, and and he was really super active on stage.
I remember him very distinctly.
Is that the guy we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. Sorry,
It's
but
okay.
but he was a virtuoso, a British virtuoso in his realm of percussion, and people like Elton and Sting, brought him to fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that wasn't him.
Okay.
This
This is Nigel.
configuration
Gotcha.
was Nigel, and it was someone else playing percussion, and Billy had uh, Crystal.
Ty Farrow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when Billy did his thing, she was on percussion,
Right.
and when Nigel was doing Elton's thing, the bass player, um, I think with Billy's the Australian guy, wonderful player, David. Um, David was playing Billy songs, and uh, Elton's bass player was playing tambourine.
Cool.
Yeah, and so and vice versa. So they did in the mixed mash of Billy song for song with Elton.
Yeah.
And so that was the same concept with the Tornadoes. We had to mix and match according to whose hit record we were doing, and so and then play together on songs. And so these are one-off moments, Adam, that are a wonderful challenge. They're kind of nerve-wracking at the moment to anticipate them, but once you get into it and hit the first downbeat, man, you know that there's no turning back.
Yeah.
So we're moving forward with the song, man, and we're listening to each other, because that became a very wonderful discipline. As you know, your ears are all together with each other, and that separates good players from not so good. Are the players that learn how to listen to each other.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
familiar with this.
Yes, you are, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've loved some of, your videos there with an ensemble, and doing your videos on a certain song, whatever it is.
Oh, are you talking
Yeah.
about the jazz videos from
Yes.
all those years ago? Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you
Yeah.
got to see those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really good. And I knew that in a mode of what it takes to do what you love doing, that's one of the elements, and so I knew that I could kind of explain that to you from my point of view because you'd understand.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
although I have to say, I think I've gotten a lot better at listening to the other musicians than I was
Well, no,
when I did that. I was much too afraid when I made those videos. I've
well,
learned to calm down a little bit since then.
but that's the process, and you
Yeah.
didn't show any of that particular moment. You were using that nervousness and converting it into energy, and you were successful on a given song because there it was. You all performed the song from intro to outro, and so there was no, there was no going, well, I know you might be tentative on this. There was none of that. It was all wonderfully done,
Well,
wonderfully
thank you.
executed.
I had some fantastic musicians with me. Bill Norman on drums,
And see,
phenomenal,
well, that's
and Ramon Puzer on bass. They were just
okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
well,
and I know that's a big part of the confidence building for you in a given moment.
it was nice to have those videos. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's my 14 years with Freddie, um, and he treated me really good too. He was I was able to um, basically he never intruded, and that's kind of like Billy with Liberty, but now Billy, with Chuck, um, it just wasn't necessary to intrude.
Right.
Yeah, and so I had that same comfort level with Freddie. That he I in certain situations I chose to be able to kind of contribute a little of me, and he never once said, uh, "Don't do that."
Just play the drums.
Yeah, I'll just play the drums, right?
Right.
No, he didn't. He loved to let it flow forward, and so I was doing the job for him. And that's all that mattered, and
Yeah.
he like Billy and Hoyt was very good to me.
Well, yeah. It sounds like you found musicians and they found you also. And it was a
Yeah,
good match. People that you
yeah,
immediately respected and wanted to play with. You weren't just doing a job, you were working with people that you liked. And I think they knew that and
yep,
they appreciated the respect that you gave them and they gave you a
yep,
chance to they they were able to use your talents
yep,
without using you.
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and the word using the word in a good way.
Right.
In a very positive way, in a creative way. But yeah,
Collaborated. They
yeah,
collaborated with you. Yeah.
right, yeah, and moving it forward. The song, whatever it is, moving it forward. Your personal relationship, because as you know, the show is 90 minutes or whatever it is, but there's the other 22 and a half hours that you're together as well. And that
Right.
and you're in a touring mode. You're not home with your wife and not kicking back. You're out there on schedules, and it gets rough and tough.
How long have
And
you been married?
so we just celebrated November 3rd, number 48.
That's yeah. Okay. So gotta give a shout out to your wife here. All these stories you've been telling me, and
Yeah,
she's been present for all of it.
yeah, and Billy was present as best man at our wedding.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's neat.
that just worked out neat. Yep. So
Well,
we
I'll honor your wife for
I certainly will pass that on.
yes,
And
because
and
it's
and
not
she
easy to be
most
a spouse of a session musician,
not at all, or traveling musician,
or
even worse.
especially yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah, especially that, and so Maryland, has been able to come to scenarios throughout our whole 50 years actually, and so yeah, she's a part of those evolutions of Billy's first band with Al Hertzberg and Larry Russell, etc. So we're all familiar all the way through.
Yeah.
And when in 2017, when Jeff set up a come together with Billy at Dodger Stadium here, well, Barron was part of that too, and so we Billy honored us then, and graciously honored me. Um,
That's nice.
yeah, he did a real nice thing for me um, when my sister was passing away from cancer. I just Marilyn sent a message because I said, "Could you send a message to Billy through the office, and if he would, just uh, send my sister a signed picture because she she'd always been a fan, and she loved that I was with him. And um, so Marilyn passed on that message to Billy's office, um, and Jane, his secretary there, uh, also was gracious to us at different times, getting us together at concerts. And he so he uh, wrote back a note to Marilyn saying that he'd just gotten off the phone with my sister, and he called her up and talked to her for an hour.
Oh wow.
Yeah, uh, and Freddie Fender also at that time uh, wrote a note, and he sent my sister a note. But Billy was especially gracious as well, in that you know, he stepped out for a moment on my behalf.
That's really neat. What a great story.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah.
So I'm forever grateful for that, and to you too. I'm glad I'm talking with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Had I known how many stories you had, I think I would have been more intimidated. This is just
No,
astounding.
yeah, and I knew that having it, you give me the opportunity here. I'm really, really thankful and appreciative, and forever grateful, Adam. And when I told Marilyn about our Zoom, and this is my first Zoom, so I thank you for giving me a comfort level here, man. Because once once the digital age hit, I was kind of like, wow, I don't know if I could even I can't catch up with this.
Now,
Like
this from the guy. Let's see. Let's see what you've done to get out of
yeah.
your comfort zone. You're telling me you can't overcome your discomfort. I'm sorry. I got 4 hours of footage here that says you're a liar.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, but I strive to try and be convincing in that mode. So I hope I have, because
You have. Well,
yeah,
so
and the
what's next for
embellishment.
you in this digital age?
Yeah,
What you gonna do?
well, my last I did a tour of Nevada in January,
Mm-hmm.
and then I did a church performance here locally in Orange County, and that was it, because yeah, everything is closed down when it comes to the music biz,
Right.
and I'm hanging in, um, and fortunately we can hang in. My wife Marilyn right now is in Hawaii. She tested the COVID day before yesterday and flew. I took her to LAX, and so she's in Maui, testing COVID, but doing her thing with hotels, etc., for a
Mm-hmm.
week to try and come back together. And I'm doing this moment here to try and advance myself in the technical Zooming with you. And
Yeah.
I'm also grateful to you for that opportunity,
Oh
um,
yeah.
because you've given me confidence. You see, because I've actually achieved being able to rehook up with you. So you've been teaching me a little here,
Wow.
and so I don't see. Um, I've there's been some attempts to do some live gigging, um, and they've been cancelled. So we're really looking at January, and the vaccine, and all the applicable hurdles to get a back deal. I haven't been tested, but I took my wife to be tested. She's good. She's negative, because she
Okay.
had to be, to be able
To travel.
to be able to go to travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you went through it in London.
Oh, you followed all of that. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And so I know you're good.
I know I'm good so far.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. And so I've been following that and you, and basically following all the new young acts who are you there?
I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I pressed something and I lost you. So
Yeah, well, you called me one of the new young acts, so I think you're mistaken there. I'm not. I'm
Uh,
not one of the new young acts. I wish I was.
no, but you are one of the, the major acts who are, doing very well in, what you do, which is the love of music first of all,
Yeah,
and you embrace the technology, or you're educated in it, both, right?
but like you, I've
And
also had to get over my discomfort. There's definitely been a learning curve, but
yeah,
just
but
like you, trying to
but
be
you know what I
brave.
found? Yeah, brave, yes, courageous, and one of the good things about it, I guess, is it's really in nanosecond time,
Yeah, right.
isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the press of an icon, whatever it is, and you're instantly there, and then you go, I remember that icon. That's how I get back to that, and so yeah, it's instant. So I've been following the people. The first act that I got into on YouTube here was a couple of sisters by the name of Lark and Poe. And I don't know if you've tracked them at all, but Lark and Poe, these two sisters from Georgia and Tennessee, and they embraced the, the social media in very quickly in duetting on cover songs and doing their own videos in their own bedrooms and bathrooms and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But they were making sense of it in a studio format by being able to take the the resonance of the walls of their environment and use them to their effects, like a reverb,
Right.
and they were doing a cappella vocals on a song, and they were slapping the walls for the groove and the percussion and singing a cappella to a Long Island song called "Old Black Betty."
Yeah,
And
I've seen that video. Yeah.
yeah, you must have.
Hmm.
So I I saw that for the first time after just hours before that, I had been down here at the beach, and there was a band playing that featured two girls and a drummer and a bass player, and they were playing for this rodeo at the beach. And I stopped and watched them for a bit, and I really fell in love with what was going on because they were doing originals, and I really was impressed with them. And she, Rebecca, was singing and playing and talking and communicating so naturally, and her sister was playing slide guitar and harmonies. And honestly, they were really just. I came home and I Googled them, and at that moment, that's when I saw them doing what they were doing on YouTube, and went, this to me is as a new act in the new days of everything. And
Yeah. Well,
so I'm watching this stuff from now on.
great.
But
Well,
other than having doing local things and people just videoing you,
yeah, yeah. Well, like this is apparently the way to go, and maybe you'll have a new
yeah,
act, another act. You know,
yeah,
hope so.
yeah.
And if this can
Well,
be a part of that, I'm all for it. Definitely.
yeah, good, because I mean, you've shown astounding um, fortitude, because I've enjoyed 4 hours of this. So
As have I. Yeah,
so there you are. I think
I think so, Reese.
that
Unless we're going to talk about
we're up
what you
to
did
date.
20 years from now.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm looking forward to come back. There was a musical dip because I'd been so spoiled by the materials of those folks that we're
Yeah,
talking about, and so I do a comparison, and when the other trends happened, kind of it became somewhat dumbed down, and Nashville had a nice long ride, but that kind of tapered. And so, what's going to take its place? Well, for me, it's been some of these uh, integral songs that someone has produced where they hook up with musicians from all over the world
yeah,
on a song, and they perform the song and edit it together from all different people.
Right.
Like you could do a song with me or something, and you'd be in London and I'm in Huntington Beach.
And I have done some of that. Yeah, I have
Have you? Yeah.
I got a
That.
friend I also interviewed for this series, Dave Pickett, and he and I
Yeah.
collaborate long
Good.
distance. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Because when yeah, I remember when it first came in, a guitar player friend of mine was also part of that, and there was a rocket website or whatever, or a go-to place that you could do that. Someone would send a song, and you could add drums, add other instruments, and so it was a website, right? It was in San Francisco,
right.
and Rock It, I believe, was called. I don't think it's around anymore, but he, he turned me onto that. So that's the positive side of this, because I'm missing this interaction communication wise
Yeah,
in a musical situation. And so I found that also what happened was basically anybody can now, dust off their wonderful moments during their life, and they found themselves now retiring, and now they can come back and revisit themselves, via a song and an instrument from 40 and 50 years ago. They can now put that on, on the social media,
right.
so they get this whole new relive.
Yeah, yeah. As you've had a chance to do with the Billy Joel Completely Retold group,
Exactly.
you've introduced yourself to two or three generations, including myself, of people that
Yeah.
love the music, and yeah,
Yeah. And so, and that, that path contained a broad age group,
yeah,
the young through the generations, and then their parents turning their kids onto you. And so, with Billy and Hoyt and Freddie, that kind of turnover was also became wonderfully evident. Where you you've appealed to the sons and daughters, but now it's the grandparents and the great grandparents are
yeah.
also being turned on to that those tenures. So it's a good thing.
Rhys Clark, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much, Adam, and look forward to communications again. And you be safe and carry on doing this wonderful interviewing, etc. It's really good, and I feel honored to be a part of it with you.
Well, the honor was definitely mine. Thank you.
Well, mine too. Thank you. Bye
And
now. Oh, what? Go ahead.
I just want to thank our audience, who I hope has
Yeah.
stayed
Oh, and
with
I
us.
do too.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I do too.
Yes.
Thank you.
So thank you all for joining us on this trip. It was, I knew it was going to be fun, but I had no idea what a wonderful surprise it would be and how many great stories. So thank you. If you need to get in touch with me, if you want to know more about what we're doing, it's Adam at willowschoolga.com. At this point, I'm so tired. I hope I got that right. You can definitely find me at www.acole.net, acole.net. You can reach me one way or the other. Thanks, everybody. We'll be looking forward to seeing you at our next interview. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody, from Rhys as well. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Rhys.
Bye now.
Bye bye.